Hey there, thanks very much for watching. My name is Ruf, and this is going to be a little video about preschool TV in the UK and especially 2D cutout animation. Great, so I hope you're all animation fans. We're going to be able to look at the behind the scenes making of some shows like Sarah and Duck.
Are you okay, Sarah?
Yep.
And also Love Monster.
Where?
I have to find him. Monster Teddy! Are you in here? Are you in here?
Both of these shows are on CBeebies, and they were both made at Karrot Animation. So my name's Ruf, and I'm a director, a rigger, and a designer at Karrot Animation. And Karrot Animation is a South London animation studio, and we specialise in preschool TV, preschool animation TV, and we specialise in a type of animation called cutout animation. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of you who know all about animation, so you're probably going to recognise plenty of things in this video, but I still always find it interesting thinking about 2D cutout animation. And as you can see, Karrot Animation Studios and other animation studios, they're really friendly, lovely places, filled with really cool, creative people who do all sorts of different roles. Over here on the right, this is Andy, who's a top-notch designer on Sarah and Duck. So this video, I think I'm just going to begin talking about the preschool animation industry in the UK, and then what is 2D cutout animation. And then I think we'll look at some rigs in the software, so you'll be able to see exactly how things are made. And then I also want to show you guys some completed scenes so that you can see 2D cutout animation in context. Preschool TV in the UK is really thriving. It's been a really strong industry for lots and lots of years, and it's really become a speciality of the UK. So there's lots of animation studios all over the UK making every level of animation, from preschool to school age to older and into adult and movie animation. And here at Karrot, we've always focused on preschool animation. So you can see some of our shows on this page: Love Monster, Sarah and Duck, and Peppa Pig. And these are all examples of 2D cutout animation. These are actually all made in the same software. So 2D cutout animation is what we're going to be talking about today. So what is 2D cutout animation? Now, like I said, I'm sure plenty of you are going to know a bunch of this, but I still find it interesting thinking about the different techniques. So over on the left, we've got 3D animation. You're all aware of Pixar movies, Disney movies. That's when the animator is manipulating a 3D rig always inside the computer. And then stop motion animation is always physical with a real model of a character, which the animator is manipulating by hand in front of a camera. And then 2D traditional, which is hand-drawn animation. So every frame is hand-drawn, and it used to be done on paper. Some people still do it on paper, but these days it's almost all done digitally on Wacom tablets, drawing tablets. And then our animation technique, 2D cutout. Now, 2D cutout can be a little bit hard to explain, but basically it's a 2D puppet which the animator is manipulating, not drawing. So it's quite interesting, and I will explain a bit more about that. So the old school way of animating is 2D traditional, and you can see here from Pinocchio, this character is being drawn on every frame, a brand new fresh drawing. And this is a pencil example, but something like Adventure Time from my previous page is drawn on digital tablets straight into Photoshop or in animation software. So that's 2D traditional. And the difference with our technique, 2D cutout, is that the drawings are actually done before the animation. They're turned into a puppet, or what we call a rig, and then the animator, instead of drawing, is actually manipulating that puppet. So if you look on the left here, I'm sure you've all seen pinned puppets before, and this is a really simple example where you draw a character and then you break them up into their separate limbs, their separate elements, and then you pin them back together at their rotation points. And the result is that you compose the character. So you've started with a single drawing and now you compose the character. And if you look on the right here, this is a bit more of an example of what it looks like in the animation software. And now if I open up our software and you can have a look at our Sarah rig, this is how it looks when you are manipulating those pre-drawn elements. So I can pick up the limbs And when I rotate them, I'm basically creating a new pose. Instead of drawing, I am manipulating the puppet. And then once I'm done with that frame, move on to the next frame and make a new pose, and then do that over and over again until we've got the finished animation. So before diving right into the rigs and taking them apart, I thought I'd just talk a little bit more about 2D cutout and why we choose to use it as a technique. So 2D cutout shows are not just for preschool, it's a super popular technique across lots of TV animation. The most obvious example is South Park, where the characters really are like cut up pieces of paper, which are then moved by the animators to create new poses. And it's a very simple show, and it doesn't really have 2D rigs per se, it's much more about those cut up pieces of paper. And then there are some other examples of older age 2D cutout shows that might be kind of surprising, that they're not traditional animation. So the Netflix show BoJack Horseman, that's a 2D cutout show. Rick and Morty is like a hybrid 2D cutout and 2D traditional. So you can see the two characters here, they're actually rigged. They are, I think, done in Toon Boom. And then often an animator will come in and do some traditional animation as well as the puppets. And then Archer is very much a puppet show. And you can start to see a big range of differences in the style of 2D cutout, and you can also start to see how much quality you can put into 2D cutout shows. Rick and Morty, I think, is just right up there with the best animation on TV at the moment, especially with their effects animation, the sci-fi stuff they do. They also have 3D animation. It's a big hybrid, but the characters are 2D cutout. So our software is called Cell Action. That's what Peppa Pig is made in, Sarah and Duck, and Love Monster, and it's specifically 2D cutout animation software. Other software that you might use is Toon Boom, and also Adobe Animate, which used to be called Flash. Now, Cell Action doesn't actually have any drawing in it, so our rigs are drawn in Photoshop before they get into Cell Action. So now I think it's time to look at some rigs. Okay, so here's our Sarah rig in Cell Action, and just as you saw me posing earlier, basically what I'm doing to begin with is just grabbing elements and rotating them to create poses. So the limbs are the simplest thing. So they rotate around the shoulder here when I move it, nice and simple. And then here the lower arm rotates around the elbow. So that works perfectly, nice and simple to get your head around that. If I go into wireframe mode, you can see all of the different elements that make up the character. And you can see there's quite a lot going on. Let me have a look at all of her wireframes. All the stuff behind the drawing. So let's have a look at some of those now. The head, you can see all these circles and stuff that don't appear in the drawing. They are to manipulate small areas of the hat so that we can make minute changes to her pose. Sarah, her character nods a lot. So if I grab one of these squares, one of these handles, you can slide the pieces of the face around and make her nod very subtly. So where the arms are just a single piece of art, the head and the hat are actually vector elements that are drawn in Cell Action, and they are you're able to move those around as if they are sort of a live drawing. So that's quite interesting. So you can see we've made quite a subtle sort of head nod there by manipulating the slidable face elements. So this bottom square, this moves the whole face inside the head, and then I think this one's the eyes, there we go, top one's the pupils, and then hiding away somewhere, these squares here, these are actually the eyelids. So if I bring them in and then change their shape, we can make Sarah blink. So they are always available but always hidden, and there's the other ones, so we can give her a blink. So there's lots sort of hiding around, and she looks happy. There's lots hiding behind the drawing that you're not seeing. So what does she do now? She sort of waves and blinks. And you can see over here, so these are my frames. Currently I'm drawing on 2 frames. I'm using 2 frames, just going between them there. And a scene usually contains, hundreds of frames, a few hundred frames. And another nice, interesting thing about her rig is her body, which is another one of those live elements. So if I grab the big circle and rotate it, she's going to move around her torso, and she can bend and bend her body over. And then if I grab the top one up here, this shape, it's higher up, and I think there's one at the bottom which will move the whole thing. And you can see it gives us this nice natural bend in the shape, and you can actually refine that even more with these Bezier handles. So this, if I go wild, you can see how it's built. Each of these Bezier handles describes the shape of the body. You can pull the little triangles here to soften or sharpen the curves, but it's all simplified for the animator by just grabbing the middle movers, so that's nice, and the zip line goes with it and everything like that. And what else can we do? It's probably good to have a look at some shapes. So for example, the hand, if we want to make her point her fingers, what we do is we click on the hand, and now we've got accessible all of these separate hundreds of elements. I think there are hundreds. Does it tell me how many there are? And these are all pre-drawn by the artist, so the animator doesn't have to draw them, but there's a pointing hand. So she can point her finger, but she can do any one of these hands. There's absolutely loads. And not every element has shapes, but as you can imagine, the hands have lots of shapes, the feet have lots of shapes. There's even more. Loads of shapes for the feet. And I'll show you all of these in Photoshop after, laid out. And of course, the mouth has lots of shapes because she's going to talk. I'm just going to scroll through some of her shapes. The chin also moves when she opens her mouth wider. These are the happy shapes, but sometimes Sarah gets a bit fussy, so she can get her more stern, flat shapes like these. So now she's sort of got a bit more of a negative attitude. And then there are those scenes where she becomes sad. So we actually have these sad shapes here where she's really not happy. And when you think about acting, when you think about what you're doing with your hands, your feet, your mouth when you're talking and playing out a scene, you're going to want as many options as you can get. When we're rigging, when we're designing a character, we're making sure that we're thinking of everything that the animator will possibly need to make their scene. So those are some shapes. And that is the sort of basics of the Sarah rig. So what I'm going to do now, I think, is show you exactly what that looks like in Photoshop. Okay, you join me here in Photoshop now. So this is where we draw all the elements and get it ready for selection. So this is what Sarah's elements look like. There are lots and lots and lots, as you can see, but this actually probably only represents about a quarter of what's in her rig. So we deal with quite a few bits of artwork. So what the rigger's job is to look at the final design. Here's Sarah, drawn by the art director, and it's the rigger's job to look at it and start to decide how to break it up, how the arms will come apart, how the legs will come apart, how many mouth shapes we'll need for all the talking scenes, exactly how to make the hat work and the eyes work, everything. And this is the beginning of the answer. So up here, you can see all sorts of different hat shapes. There's a lot more than these so that we can pull them down. Here's her eyes. The eyelids have to be this large so that they can cover the eyes. All sorts of different decisions being made. The hair, that's how the hair looks like when it's hidden behind the hat, and it can rotate around the center point. Here's a selection of happy mouth shapes and sad mouth shapes. All of the feet. And if you think about just walking for a second, your foot is going to go through so many different orientations and rotations when you move, when you walk, that the artist just needs to draw as many as possible. So these are all the fronts, the front three quarters. This is the foot from the side, and it's going up and down and then round the back. The legs are really simple though. They're just an upper leg and a lower leg. And then for hands, lots and lots of hands. We get through hundreds. Arms are interesting because you might want to pivot your arm towards the camera or away from the camera, so that's why the stripes are bending here. And then hoods, Sarah has put her hood on occasionally, so we make sure that there's shapes for that. And lots of zip shapes, because the zip's a really iconic part of Sarah's design. So we make sure that she can handle the zip, and if she's going to move it, we've got the hand shapes to be able to do that, and we've also got the zip shapes to be able to do that. And you can see if I scroll down here on the left, this is all of the layers that make up Sarah's rig, and making a rig takes about 2 or 3 weeks, and basically all of this work, like I said, is to make sure that she can do everything that she needs to do in every episode of a series of Sarah and Duck. So that's Sarah's Photoshop file. How about next we look at some animation scenes? So once the character has been designed by the artist and then rigged by the rigger, it's put in the hands of the animator. And animation is super fun, and cell action makes it really accessible to get to the poses and get to the animation that you want to do. So in Sarah and Duck we have these characters called the Ribbon Sisters, and they are a pair of really cute Indian twins who feature in a circus. So their movements in animation is often very nice and flowing. They're pulling these ribbons through the air, which makes a lovely shape in the air with lots of what we call secondary animation. And it's a real nice challenge for the animators to make these performances look so nice for our episodes. So I found this little cute scene here in Sarah and Duck featuring the Ribbon Sisters, and I thought we would dive into the animation scene to see how the animator made it work. First of all, I'm just going to let you watch the scene.
Good catch, Duck.
Ooh,
Looks like you'll be getting some exercise after all.
musical exercise.
Okay, that was a really cute scene from Sarah and Duck, taking place in Sarah and Duck's garden. And I've grabbed one of the scenes of the Ribbon Sisters here, and we're back in cell action. So this is our animation software. Here's the stage, and you can see this now has a background. And it's always interesting to me to see that the painting carries on after the frame. That's always cool to see a little bit behind the scenes. So we've got the two characters, and then on the right here, this is all of the frames, the individual poses for each character. And this scene, you can see, has 82 frames. We're on 2s, so it's playing out at every other frame. And if I go into wireframe, we can watch the little scene running past. So the ball comes into frame, this Ribbon Sister catches it with her ribbon, and then there's a little anticipation here as the ribbon is sort of floating upwards against gravity, and then the ball will hit. Oh no, it hits and bounces. She balances it, and then down, and then there's the gravity of her pulling the ribbon around the ball and back up again. So all the same principles apply to when we looked at Sarah's rig. And if I go slowly, you can just start to see how the arms rotate, the knees are rotating now as her hips go down, and all of the elements are being manipulated by the animator. So this is fully completed animation. And you can see all the individual elements that the animator has had to use to make this animation. It's interesting to see it in wireframe. If I watch the rest in full color, you can see she's about to catch the ball there. Oh, and it's nice to see, I'll go back to the beginning, it's nice to see her mouth shape is changing occasionally. So she closed her mouth there. She's using hand shapes that grab on, and there's a nice little flick there of look at the ribbon going through. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Catches the ball, and then throws the ball, and I'll just show you it with the ball. And the ball's a separate element. It's very simple. And here comes the throw. Hey. So some reasons to choose 2D cutout animation as your style can be quite interesting. Mostly it's to do with budgets and time. So it's the fastest way to animate a character because you only have to draw the character once in Photoshop. And speed is really good because we're making full episodes of 6 minutes in 12 days, which is quite a fast turnaround, which is why there's no time for the animators to actually do the drawings themselves. But that doesn't mean that it can't look like hand-drawn animation. Something that we try to do in our shows is to still keep an illustrative quality and still keep the animation fluid and lots of human interaction in the animation so that it looks like it could have been drawn. And one way that we do this is to use paths. So you can see that the ribbon is sometimes straight, but here it's sometimes very curvy, and it's being affected by gravity, and it's being affected by her pulling it. And that can be done by, again, using these control points. So if I grab a control point and start moving this ribbon around, you can see that it's as if I'm drawing it. It has the same effect as if I were to draw it, but I was able to do it without doing any drawings. I'm just using a mouse and keyboard. And then when we get to this stretchy shot here, this stretchy frame, you can make it even stretchier by grabbing that control point there, putting it right down to the ground, putting the ball right down. And now that move will be even stretchier for when she pings it up, adding more gravity, adding a bit more energy into the ball. And you can see just how quickly I'm able to make new poses. Donk, and she's thrown it over the fence. So to design a character for 2D cutout, we start with just sketching the character, usually in notebooks, and that's really simple. But then what we do is we make a turnaround. So back in Photoshop, I've got the artist's turnaround here. And you can see it's just a really simple 180 rotation of the character. And then that's translated into what we call actions in the rig. So if I go and find this ribbon sister, let's get rid of the ball. We've got these actions selectable here. So you can choose your own turnaround and then make your pose from that turnaround. Great. So that is how that animation scene worked. I'm just going to play you the completed clip again so that you can see all of that in context.
Good catch, Duck.
Ooh!
So let's look at a couple more selection rigs. These are going to be more 2D cutout animation rigs. So of course we've got Duck here in selection. This is how his wireframe looks. All of his individual elements. It's all the same principle with elements from Photoshop. Duck has a few more of the live drawing tools, so you can move his entire body as a path, and that's really helpful because he's a more slapstick character. He needs a bit more flexibility, so if you move his neck like this, things are moving around live, and he's got lots and lots of wing shapes as well, which are really useful. There's some flapping wing shapes. There's probably about 50 or 60 wing shapes. He can pick things up, he can open his wings, and here's some gliding. And then he can also, where's point? He can point at you. And there's a big gap here so that the wing can be placed anywhere. This is a sort of a principle of cutout animation. He can open his beak. And he's got eyelids so that we can make him look angry. Brr. Pick up one foot. All sorts of stuff. Now, he's got some nice feet. These feet shapes work as a cycle of 2D traditional animation. They're a walking animation. So if you use these in your animation, you are using drawn animation in a cutout rig. So that's quite an interesting principle. I thought I would open up these drawings. So these have been drawn by the rigger in Photoshop, and this is a frame-by-frame 2D drawing. So sometimes cutout animations, like I was saying that Rick and Morty is a hybrid, sometimes cutout animation rigs will involve pieces of traditional hand-drawn animation. So that way, again, we're using the lighter technique of cutout animation to access some of the nicer effects that you get from 2D traditional drawing. So let's watch some duck scenes now to see how this rig works in animation.
Bravo!
Bravo!
Cool, and then the last character I want to show you in selection is Cloud Captain, who's also from Duck. And Cloud Captain is a pretty fun character. He controls the weather in the world of Duck. He shepherds the clouds, and he's a really cute Frenchman. And he's interesting. His rig is slightly different because it involves lots of those live elements. So because he's got such a tall body, he ends up leaning over a lot of the time, making these really nice kinks in his body. Which give him a fun movement. It's a personality sort of movement all to himself. And his arms are also very bendy, so they have their own special selection rig. Once you've made a bend like this, you can soften it with this middle section. You can also scale it to make the bend really curvy. And he has quite flamboyant sort of attitude sometimes, and these bendy elements help his performance keep really, really light and sort of almost like a dance, especially his little legs when they move. You'll see in the animation. So let's have a look at a couple of Cloud Captain scenes.
C'est merveilleux! Follow me! Alors, I look after the clouds here. I keep them fluffy and happy. Ooh, come closer.
So, thanks very much for watching, everyone. It's been really great to show you these rigs and these scenes, and I hope you had a good time looking at some 2D cutout animation. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.